Ahoy, ahoy, prajte. Vremondu, jedezit hodin, dapoledne, a jutri, taksha ze shazna .NET API review. All right, how bad did I butcher that, Carl?
That was not check. Sorry.
Google says it was.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I didn't parse that.
Yeah, neither did I, sorry.
All right. Well, we have found a language that I can't fake my way through.
Not yet.
All right. Yeah, apparently we're at a time of the year that we're starting to pick things up. Um, I set a optimistic agenda today for hoping we get through about half, but you know, we'll see. First up, a revisit of .NET Extension 6496 Kubernetes Specialized Resource Monitoring.
Yes. So, quick reminder, what is it all about? So these changes bring possibilities of reading CPU and memory requests and limits in Kubernetes. And this is like the new package, but in order to make it work, we have to bring some abstractions to the base package, to the diagnostics resource monitoring. So it broadens this scope of the changes a bit. And we already have been through a few of the reviews, and we can maybe start. Yeah, actually, we can start here with this class. This abstract class, which is resource quota provider, is the abstraction that will provide resource quota object which will uh, contain properties about the denominators in the calculations for the CPU usage. And this provider would be used in the actual classes that are doing those calculations. And it will have few implementations, the default ones for Windows and for Linux. And uh, and this would be in the base package, and there would be one more in the Kubernetes package. So here we have the resource quota class, which is probably the one that we have to go through the most, because this one was not fully agreed on. And the biggest issues we have here is the guaranteed memory in bytes and guaranteed CPU in cores fields. So what do they mean in all of the scopes? I think that it's described a bit below under the alternative. So the guaranteed, here is the proposition to go with baseline actually instead, because it's more neutral, I would say, than guaranteed, because guaranteed says that it guarantees something, but for the calculations, it does not guarantee anything. It just needs some denominator, basically. So baseline seems to work here a bit more. And in Windows containers, it's the same as the limit if they do not run in Kubernetes environment. So this is basically the same as the max value in that context. In Linux, baseline is the converted CPU or weight or shares, depending if it's cgroups v2 or v1. And in Kubernetes, it would mean declared resource requests. So the one that we target, especially with all of those changes. So I think that this is the where we can stop a bit and ask for feedback and to see if this naming sounds like better now with the baseline.
I think baseline is probably more flexible than guaranteed.
Yeah, it also doesn't bring any connotations from Kubernetes. It's like, yeah, very neutral.
I think
Uh,
either way, I would need to look at the docs to understand what they are.
Right. I just think baseline seems like it's more, as other providers come on, they may not make it a guarantee. It may be more of a
Yeah,
you know,
I'm
startup
not
or
disagreeing.
yeah, fair enough.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying I think either way, neither of these names is totally clear to me. So I would need to look at the docs, at which point there's a lot more flexibility in what the names are. So I think baseline seems reasonable.
yeah, like it's worth to mention that the baseline here is the basically kind of abstract name for the thing, which like contains like the limits, converted CPUs, or in Kubernetes the resource request. It's not something that has any direct meaning in any of these. And since like it's supposed to be used in all of those three, let's call it infrastructures, yeah, it's kind we had to abstract it further. Like we had much more concrete names previously as the guaranteed or even the requests as is. So now it's just more abstract.
So if you're running just a normal process in Linux or Windows, what do these say?
In Windows, it will be the same value as the max or limit. It's the same. So as the max. So basically, when we do have this class, max CPU in cores and guaranteed CPU in cores or baseline, it will be the same.
Right, but like I reboot my computer, I run a process, I ask what these limits are. As far as I know, a default process in Windows doesn't have limits or resource quotas. So is this the maximum physical memory of the machine? Is this ulong.max value? Is it 0? What happens if there's no quota found? Does this guy throw? Like, what's the behavior?
Yes. So on the Windows, just Windows, it will be total number of cores on the machine, and in the container it would be how much the container was assigned by the host.
Right, but if I'm running outside a container, I'm just a
So just
normal
number
process,
of cores on machine.
and the max memory is
We
we call this a
all of
Windows
the
API
RAM.
and it gives us an answer, or
Yes.
Okay.
It calls API. It calls job handlers.
yeah,
In fact, there is the other suggestion, like instead of using cores, it's to switch to CPU units to also make it a bit more generic, to do not bring the connotations that those may be physical cores, although in few examples they actually are, but in few they are not. So there is also alternative to that.
yeah. In system environment, we just call it processor count, for which I think on Windows with a Intel processor with hyperthreading counts hypercores. So like we already just have this notion that processor itself is a context dependent word. So I wonder if we can just leave off the notion of units in there and just say max processors, or because in cores is a technical term and units is like now I need to look up what units means, because this makes me feel like it's instructions per second, or percentage
but
of
in fact, like under the hood, it actually like is recalculated from the millicores or the ticks that the CPUs has available throughout the time. So like, theoretically, it's also true, but yeah, you would need to check it. which is kind of also makes sense. Like the idea here is that there wouldn't be that many cases of bringing your resource quotas, except like other orchestrations actually than Kubernetes.
Well, but presumably I would, in my logging somewhere, want to talk about how busy I'm getting, and I would want to write down some number and compare it to this, right? So,
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I guess you did say it's a double, so you are allowing for a fraction of a processor.
Yes.
Okay, maybe units is fine.
I think without the in cores, I would have naively assumed this was 0 to 100 or 0 to 1, like a percentage of, yeah. And in cores, my head naturally goes to number of.
Fair enough. So, are you saying you like it as is, Steve?
I can't think of anything better.
All right.
Could be max core count. I'm not sure that's better.
Should make that edit. Yeah. All right. So, seems like we're happy with this, where again, from the discussion last time, it's these two I think go in the resource monitoring package, and this goes in a resource monitoring.kubernetes package.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. Any other feedback? All right. All right. And at least for the next few minutes, we have no more things marked as the 10-0 milestone. Woohoo.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right. .NET 11. Add support for Z standard to system I/O compression. Number 59591 in .NET Runtime.
Right. Thank you. So this is pretty much mirroring to what we have done for Brotli compression in, I believe, .NET 5. So except we are also adding support for compression dictionaries. And yeah, since the API surface is rather big, I would probably start with things we already have precedent for, what we have done with, for Brotli. So if you scroll a little bit down, there should be the standard encoder decoder. And those are basically a copy of what we have with Brotli encoder and Brotli decoder. They are using the operation status with the same meaning, and some of the parameters are the same, like the max window or the quality parameter for the encoder. some things which are different and which are not present in Brotli are the reset method, which allows you to reuse the encoder or decoder to compress or decompress another chunk, another file, without having to destroy and reallocate the native context. So it should improve the efficiency a little bit in cases where it matters for some people. And then there is some utility functions like getMax decompressed length, which either reads the value from the header of the compressed data, or gives the most pessimistic estimate how big the data will be once decompressed. There are, I think, yeah, with the getMax decompressed length, there is some weirdness that, of course, like the data might not be available, the header might be corrupted or something. So we can either make it throw some, I don't know, invalid data exception if it's corrupted, or we can make it into try get decompressed length. I basically don't have specific opinion either way, but yeah.
Without doing the decompression, how do we know if it's actually corrupted or malicious?
So the header has some specific format. I think there's some magic bytes at the beginning, and the length will be, I don't know, in the first 10 bytes or something. There will be like the length. If
But we can't actually make trust decisions based on that.
sorry, can you repeat the question? Maybe I misunderstood.
We can't trust the value in that to be
Right.
actual.
Yeah. I think maybe it's mentioned here in the note. So yes, the value that's present in the header may be incorrect. You can edit this to say whatever you want, but the implementation will enforce this value and will not decompress more than is written there. So if you try to create a zip bomb or zip bomb style attack, you compress 5 gigabytes of zeros into 30 kilobytes or something, and then say, hey, this will decompress into 1 megabyte. The implementation will actually stop after 1 megabyte and will refuse to decompress further. So yes, the value may be incorrect, and that's what we should document. But it should be pretty much informative. There are other measures to make sure that there is to prevent attacks on this surface in the library implementation.
And what does it do if you give it data that doesn't start at a header position?
Then it will fail. So on native, there is like return value unknown, size unknown, or size error, and in those cases, we would either throw the exception, or in case of the try get, we would return false and obviously don't say anything, which should be a signal to the user, hey, this data is not decompressible. There is something wrong with it.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, you already have it here in a comment question, but what happens if I give a signed max input of compressed data? It will theoretically expand to bigger than signed max int. So
yes, that's a good question. I don't remember from top of my head if he has something similar for Brotli, get max compressed size, but I since arrays in .NET are bound to integer sizes, I believe I've seen mostly ints used for sizes in those contexts, but obviously if you are using some sort of streaming, you can obviously get bigger files than 2 gigabytes or 4 gigabytes, whatever you get there. So that was the question maybe for you, if you have precedent for also returning ints or sorry longs from other APIs other than file stream or where else I believe we have we use those. In order to be 100% correct and like not to handle weird cases, I would return long in there. But there is a question I wanted to call out in this review.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing an equivalent thing on the Brotli types at all.
Yeah, so or
like,
right there.
Even just like stream.length and stream.position are both long. So that I would expect this would also just naturally be long when it's talking about.
Other yeah. In that case, it should be long. For some reason I thought that on streams those are integers.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I'm misremembering.
unless the Brotli unless the Z standard header says that a maximum, that you need that no frame can exceed 31 bytes of length.
Oh, it can definitely.
Yeah. Because then this would need to throw if it exceeded.
Yeah.
So I think position is long, but I feel like stream has length and long length. We've only done .NET for 20 years. We should know what stream looks like. Nope, it's long length. Sorry. The property is named length and it returns a long.
Okay. So in that case, this should return long as well.
Okay. And I think it's fine to have both the get and the try get, where the try get says it returns false if the data is not the beginning of a frame header or whatever.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely have both.
Because
But what does the get do in that case? It throws?
Yes.
it's if all you were going to do is write if not try throw, then it'll throw for you.
Is this such a common operation that we need the non-try?
That's a fair question.
I don't know.
I am not sure I know either. So
If you do only one, which one would you choose, Steve? The try get
I would-
or just
I would go with the try. If we think that this is frequently going to be called with arbitrary data, I don't know what the use cases are. Like if we expect.
So we should expect this to be called with, I don't know, for example, data which we receive over the internet. So one use case for Z standard, I'm not sure how widespread it is, but it was talked about that we might be able to support it, is that basically that we will receive Z standard encoded, I don't know, HTTP response, and then we will want to decompress it, and some users might want to pre-allocate right size buffer for that, and then they would call it on basically untrusted input. So I think the try get decompressed length would be better fit there to not throw all the time.
Yeah, but how often is anybody going to realistically call the decoder? I feel like the average caller is probably just going to use the stream.
Yep.
So the stream is going to call this, at which point it sort of doesn't matter, but I think starting with the try and letting people say they want to have the throwy one later is fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's more the span style.
do we have both on the Z standard, Radek? Actually is
On Brotli, we don't have this API for get decompressed land. And I check. I think it even is not supported by the implementation that we are using internally. I
Okay.
might be mistaken, but for some new additions, I have checked if it would make sense to add them for Brotli as well. But definitely for reset, it doesn't work, and I think I didn't see this one either on Brotli API surface.
So be sort of one off anyway, right? Regardless of the choice we make.
Yeah.
Did I hear correctly that this is going to throw in our default implementation, or is it that the Brotli equivalent would throw?
No, the Brotli equivalent does not exist.
Okay. I thought you said was not supported in our library, and if it's Z standard decompress bound is not implemented in the reference library, then why are we exposing the function? So
yeah, all the functions here are implemented in the reference library that we will be pulling into the runtime repo. So that should be fine for the API that is there. I was talking about whether it would make sense to add similar functions for Brotli where available, but that's going to be a different proposal. And so let's focus here on these standards.
Just,
So-
I know that
Yep.
we're comparing this decoder to existing like Brotli APIs and stuff. In ASP.NET, we're facing like a similar kind of high performance decoder decryption API design right now. And it's harder for us to get an upper bound. And we were considering, like for .NET 11, to use iBuffer writer as kind of the low level high performance primitive. I guess actually, and sorry if you already answered this, is that upper bound, assuming that try get decompressed length returns true, like you're guaranteed if you have that amount of space that you can decompress?
Yes, the underlying documentation says so that that's the maximum bound for the decoded data.
But you would have to like scan the data twice, basically, or do you just look at a header? Is it pretty?
Yeah, so there are two options. So the standard format can include the length of the decoded data in the header, and so if it is there, you can read it, and you are guaranteed that it's true, that it's correct in constant time. If it isn't there because the field is optional in the header, then it does some scanning and does pessimistic estimate based on some parameters of the individual blocks.
Right. Yeah, thanks for the explanation. Yeah, I was just thinking maybe iBuffer writer might make sense to avoid the rescanning or whatever, but I know that's a pretty drastic change. But yeah, just figured I'd throw that out there.
So
Where does
this
this span come from? Like, how do I know that what am I passing it? Presumably I don't have to pass in the entire payload.
I think you do.
Yeah, so ideally you should pass the entire payload, and that's how the underlying implementation works. It accepts the pointer to the entire blob of data. I didn't test it how it behaves if you pass it only like, I don't know, the first portion. If the value is in the header, it might work, but obviously, like I know it's not ideal. So
So this isn't for a frame. This is for the full document.
well, the frame. Yeah, so there's some terminology problems because I think in the standard the frame is like a file, entire encrypted, like single unit from start to end, and or is it? Because like one implementation calls it frames, the other calls it chunks, the other calls it something else. So this one will need the entire like one single unit that you decompress from start to finish.
Right. And so aside from it is the entirety of my file buffer, would
Mhm.
that be? It's presumably not just the answer of how far did you move from the decompress operation status method, because that could be you stopped writing because you ran out of destination space. So
Yeah.
how do you know? Yeah, how do you know what to pass here? Where do you get the notion of this is the next chunk, and I want to ask how big this
Well,
chunky framey
yeah.
PC thing will be?
So you get, I don't know, the standard encoded HTTP response. So you take the entire response and pass it into the function. Or if you have the standard encoded file, you read the entire file and pass the entire buffer into this function.
Yeah. So
Is
is
Z standard not used for large payloads that are streamed? Or you just wouldn't use this function in this case?
Then you wouldn't use this function. There is like a notion of streaming decompression where you instantiate some context and you feed the data into it and read data out. That's the instance decompress method, what is for. And then you should be able to read to get the size from the context. But I didn't figure out a nice way to expose it over the API. I can try to explore that again, because exposing it as like as a property on the decoder, yeah, that's one way it would work. But since the size is optional, then it would have to be, I guess, nullable. So basically, for big chunks of data, this is not an API which you would use, and we would probably have to do it slightly differently for large compressed data.
Is Z standard closer to gzip, where it's just one compression unit, or closer to zip/pkzip, where it also embeds like a directory structure?
No, it's just a single. It basically compresses a stream. It does not have any structure in terms of folders, directories, whatever. So you need to have something else around it to compress multiple files. To basically it's just compressing sequence of bytes.
Right. So you do like a tar.zs or something. So
Yes.
right. So in that case, it probably doesn't make general sense that you would have two compressed bundles concatenated in the same buffer. Because I was going to
No.
ask, is it looking for, now where does this end? Is there a thing behind it? Because if it was representing files, then that may be true. But if it's only ever supposed to be I am an atomic stream, you pass me the whole stream, then yeah. If you have a stream that's bigger than int.max value, then you can't put it in a span. So, but if the Z standard decompress bound can verify it from just the header and doesn't need the payload to be present, should we have some other way that you can read the long one, or will we just deal with that when it comes up?
We can add such an API later on top of this, maybe as an instance member on the decoder. I would have to look into it. I don't know from top of my head how feasible it is, but it will be additive to this proposal.
Okay.
Okay. If there are no more questions on the decoder, I think there is some more on the encoder that I wanted to.
What's reference
Yeah,
prefix?
Reference prefix. Yeah.
I will get to that when I start talking about dictionaries, because that's going to be that's going to be a little bit complicated. But I will get back to the prefix.
Okay, so you're saying you want to pause this, look at something else, and then come back.
Yes, because we will have the prefix on the encoder as well, and it's related to dictionaries.
Okay, so you want to go up to dictionary or down to encoder?
Down to encoder, please. There is so. Mhm. Yes. So there is what's new compared to Brotli is that we have constructor which takes the standard compression options. With Brotli, there is, I think, constructor which takes only the quality and window, and for Z standard we expose more of the options. So we wanted to provide a way to basically give it more fine grained configuration. Question is whether we want to keep the simpler ones as well. So the quality window and dictionary based ones that are above. It might make it more easier to not instantiate the compression options when one creates the encoder, but otherwise it's just a convenience.
I mean, is quality a notion that Z standard inherently exposes? Or are we making it up to make it look like our other APIs?
It's it's a parameter that's on the native API and has the same meaning as on gzip or deflate. It has different max and minimum range, but it's basically the same type of configuration knob. That the higher you put it, the slower the compression is, and smaller the payload. I don't think it's like named this way in the RFC, but I didn't look at if it's the same with the gzip or deflate compressions either. So, but yeah, it's called this way in the native implementation as well.
Dictionary and quality mutually exclusive.
Yes, because you construct the dictionary and you pass the quality parameter inside it for some reason. I will get to it when I talk about dictionaries, but the dictionary basically contains the quality parameter in itself.
So how often do you expect people are going to use the encoder?
Again, it's a low-level API when people don't want to use Stream for whatever reason they may have at the moment. I don't know, they want to use pipes, they want to, yeah, it's a low-level API.
Right. Because if we eliminate the quality overloads in favor of just the dictionary overloads, then that does mean you do have to allocate the dictionary, and if you otherwise would be allocating nothing, then maybe it's worth keeping the quality. Like, it's sort of the question of how much does usability matter? Because this does feel like a power API, which means it's allowed to be less friendly. But so if you want to keep them because they make sense and or a common usage, writing pipes then won't need to do any allocation while writing Z standard blobs, then sure. And if you want to cut them because you think they're silly, then we're happy to cut them. It's power API. It doesn't need to be nice.
Presumably though, there's definitely going to be allocation here, right? Like I see that this is a struct, but I was to do the reference prefix thing and whatever other handles are going to be referenced onto the covers. Like there must be some allocation happening as part.
Yes. So there is a save handle inside, obviously for the native context, and with regards to the prefix, there will be GC handle for that one.
And something that's going to have a finalizer, presumably.
Oh yeah, the save handle which holds the native context. That's the dummy object at the very top.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like I said,
it's I've made it a struct because that's what was done with Brotli, Brotli encoder decoder is also a struct which is wrapping around a save handle.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just don't think this will ever be allocation frames.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, but making it a strat removes one small allocation from there, and I just follow what we did for Brotli. I don't care either way in this instance.
Yeah,
I like the consistency, but
yeah. On the other hand, I hate mutable structs. Yeah. I mean, I was just going with like it since this says struct. If this constructor meant it was 0, but yeah, you're gonna have the safe handle no matter what. So, like,
Yeah. So the default constructed encoder and decoder will use some default parameters which are defined by the implementation. There is some default quality.
so are
and we
you
will- Mhm.
implementing the default constructor using the fact that C# lets you do that now, or are you on the first call to do work, you're opening the handle?
on the first call to work, because that's how I've seen it done in Brotli, and I wasn't aware that we can enforce default construction for structs.
I know it's a thing you can do now, and FDG says don't do it, and Tanner says the reasons it says not to do it are stupid. That's basically everything I know. I don't know if old
As in, you can force it in C#, or would this work in F#? Is
right.
there
I
like a
don't know
language
if
feature?
all languages will
Yeah.
call it. I don't know if it works if it's called from an older compiler. I just know you're allowed to define them now. And for
Yeah.
me, the fact that I don't know is part of why I wouldn't use it. But
With these constructors, I noticed that Z standard dictionary is disposable. I assume that like if I don't pass one in, you'll handle the disposal. But if I do, either directly or via options, that I should call dispose. Is that how that works?
So the encoder will not dispose the dictionary. It will. So obviously, because we are passing some data from inside the dictionary to native code, we have to do some ref counting to
I
make
see.
sure that we don't dispose of live data. But basically, user is expected to dispose of the dictionary, and encoder and decoder just holds a additional ref count to it to make sure it's not deallocated too early.
Right. So there's no like real handle or something if I don't pass one in. Like if I use one of the overloads that doesn't provide one, it's just
Well,
effectively a no op.
dictionary is optional. You don't have to
I
use
see.
it. Just very shortly, dictionary is something which you would use if you know the shape of the data and you can train something which will allow you to make many files smaller. So in documentation says it's worth it when you have, let's say, less than 100 kilobyte files, and you have like many of them, you have sizable sample, you can train a dictionary and make the compression very efficient on small files. But for bigger files, it apparently doesn't make too much sense because the algorithm itself is able to build its own dictionary on the fly.
I see. So will we go over the dictionary type later? Sorry if I'm like jumping ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to skip it because I wanted to start with what we have precedent for with Brotli, and with some small additions which are not too related to dictionaries, but dictionary will be the main part of the proposal because that's the thing that's new and different. One thing I want to call out here is the set source size near the end. As I mentioned, the format has optional field in the header which says how big the decompressed data will be. So in order to produce that thing from C# to have the final data contain the size value, one has to specify it upfront. So that's one thing that we can't do with streams, because with streams, well, we might be able to add additional API which says, hey, this stream will be only this big. and no more, and then we will be able to get it in there. But so far with the API that I have here, this is going to be the only way to put the size upfront on the compressed data.
What happens if you then write more than you said the size was going to be?
If you try to write more, the compress function will return data error, one of the operation statuses, which says that there is something wrong with the past data. Same thing, I believe, if you try to flush and you didn't write enough. Basically, it checks the size during compression.
Yep. And presumably, yes, this should go to long. This could be overloaded to accept both int and long, but I don't. Since this is the low-level type, I don't know that we care about 32-bit processor efficiency.
Yep, I'm fine with long. So same thing as with the get compressed length.
Yep.
The same thing actually for the for the one below it, the get max compressed len.
Yep. Yep. Long in, long out.
Yes. Yep, and then the standard stream is basically the only thing that's interesting there is the constructors, which are what we have similar to what we have in the other compression streams. So accepting compression mode and compression level, I believe. And then we have some of those which accept the standard compression options. And since we have made the encoder and decoder resettable, there was one contributor on the original issue who had the idea that they would like to avoid having to deallocate and reallocate the native structures. So there is an idea that we can actually allow those encoder and decoders to be reused, and we can pass them in the stream in the way that's in the middle. There is a parameter at the end, the last parameter of the constructor, which says whether the ownership of the encoder and decoder is transferred into the stream. Oh, it isn't. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Apparently you added it to the
question whether we should add it. So yeah. So with the API as it is, it would transfer the ownership, but we can also make it that the transfer of the ownership is optional, and it would either call reset or dispose based on whether the ownership was transferred or not. But yeah, I probably didn't edit the proposal. I was more leaning towards the having the owns encoder or basically parameter which would express transfer of ownership. So
What
this
does
way,
consumption of those constructors look like? Do you call reset on the encoder or decoder before you construct the stream?
so you mean how it looks like internally from the stream constructor?
No, the consumer of the stream, the person who's constructing the stream and passing in an encoder or decoder.
Yeah,
Do they call
so
it reset?
So the user will create the encoder decoder, configure it with the parameters that they want, and then they will pass it into the stream, do the compression. When they dispose the stream, then the dispose call on the Z-standard stream would call reset on the encoder or decoder, so that then they would be able to, next time they have some stream they need to decode, they would be able to create another Z-standard stream using the same encoder or decoder. Basically,
But isn't that then a penalty for the case where someone's not going to reuse the encoder or decoder? It's
Then they
an
could have just
unnecessary call default of reset.
Then they could have just passed the compression options and let the library
Yes.
create the encoder or decoder for them.
Right. So the only reason you would use these constructors is if you wanted to reuse the encoder and decoder. So then I'm not understanding the transfer of ownership. I'm trying to understand the scenario.
Yeah, the owns encoder true seems to not make sense. If the compression
There's something
options,
in
There are some things which are not configurable by the compression options. So one of them is the set source size, which I mentioned. That so this
but
would
it could
be
be, right? There'd be nothing preventing us from doing that.
No,
Oh.
we could make it another instance method on the Z standard stream, but
No,
Yeah.
I mean, no, we can make it if we wanted to. Couldn't we add source size as an option on the as like a property on the options bag?
I mean, wouldn't we just say when you call it in a compression mode compress, if the stream has if the stream is seekable, you ask it how many bytes between here and when you're done, and you just always call set source length? Like, the only reason that you would want to call set source length manually is if you gave it an unseekable stream. So just wrap it in a
Well,
stream
no,
that says
wait,
give
wait,
the answer.
For compression, you're handing it the destination. You're not handing it the source.
Yes.
So you need. So I'm saying, why couldn't the options bag have a nullable long source size property? And if it was set, the stream constructor would call set source size.
Yeah, I have tried to make the distinction between. So there are two different types of parameters, and this maybe is what the underlying implementation distinguishes, but it kind of makes sense. So, for example, there are some parameters or settings which are reset by the call to reset. For example, if you set the source size and then you call reset, it will erase whatever you set in. So what we are setting with the Z standard compression options are only those options which are persistent, which don't get erased by reset. So if we added the source size into the compression options, then you would create the encoder, then you call reset, and it would erase the source size from there, and you would have no other way to like get it back in. So that's why it's an instance method on the encoder, because you need to be able to call it after reset as well.
Reset could call it too.
Sorry?
Couldn't reset call set source size if you wanted it to? If you called reset and the options bag had a source size set, it could call set source size.
Yes, and then we would either need to add all these parameters as parameters to reset, or internally.
No, because it'd be in the options. I guess.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. The encoder does not hold a reference to the options; it just reads it. So we will have to keep a reference to it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's something we could do.
I need to ask a question about the dictionary first.
Okay.
Is it thread safe?
Dictionary it's let's say it's read only once constructed.
So the dictionary create just makes a default dictionary with no data?
We'll create take the buffer, right?
Yeah, I think we need to pop up and look at the
All
dictionary
right.
now.
All right. Yeah. Well, let's take
Where
a
we
look
at?
at the dictionary.
Also, there's
So-
an enum there that I think is like kind of hidden. What's the default mode of that enum? Like, while you're at it. But anyway, thanks. I'll let you explain.
Yeah. So I will start from the top with the create method. So compression dictionaries. So Z standard is an algorithm which, if you don't give it anything, it will start compressing and build the dictionary on the fly. And if you have some knowledge of the data that you will be compressing, for example, you know is going to be JSON, you can give it some dictionary which will speed up this process, so it will be more efficient on the small files. And basically, there are two types of dictionaries that you can have. You can either have something which which is just a blob of data and has no structure to it, and it basically the implementation will process it as if it was a prefix to the data. So it will build its internal structures based on that, and then you start compressing the data. Or it can have some additional information serialized in it. They call it entropy tables. It's a bit more technical, which we don't need to go in there. And then it has some magic header and has some structure which needs to be validated. So that's the implementation by default will check for these magic bytes, and if they don't match, they just treat it as a raw blob of data and treat that as a sample of the data, initialize the internal structures based on it, and then you continues later with the data which you try to compress. Otherwise, if the magic header matches, it will deserialize it and use it as is. So if we want to, there is a way to distinguish between those two. We can either say, hey, like there is the dictionary, and always treat it as a blob of data, or always try to deserialize it. And that's where the type enum would come in, and the question is whether we need this type of granularity exposed or not.
And then you train to create these blobs of data or whatever on the data you want to compress them in.
Yeah, so the training process is basically creating as small a dictionary that's efficient on the given samples of data. It's basically not necessary. You can, if you want, for example, if you have a, I don't know, sample JSON response, you can use that one as a raw data, as a dictionary, and it will somewhat work. But if you want to make sure to get all the efficiency that you can, you gather lots of samples, and then you run this training process, which will try to distill some very small concentrated dictionary, which will be presumably more efficient. So this training process is something that you would do offline once in a while, and then produce a data blob, and then you would load it. But it is not like the only way to get the dictionary. You can just like use one example of data, and it sort of works. So that's why there is like difference between create and train. And I didn't try it, but I assume this train from samples is going to take some time, because it's you are supposed to give it like hundreds or thousands of samples. So so it's presumably expensive operation, whereas the create will just like load array of bytes, try to read it, initialize some internal structures, and that's it.
Okay, but then if you've built a dictionary and you've passed it to an encoder and you give it stuff that's not in the dictionary, it presumably has its own compression table at that point, but it made basically a copy of this dictionary. It's not mutating it as new things are encountered.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it works at the implementation level, but it is able to like add more stuff, but not by modifying the dictionary or by copying it, but have a separate table to like build, hey, like
Sure.
stuff that wasn't in the prepared dictionary, and like there is the stuff that I encountered later. So it builds, let's say, another dictionary side by side for stuff which wasn't in the first one. That's probably a good way to think about it.
Fair enough.
How many magic bytes are there? Out of curiosity.
Sorry?
You said like so detect mode works based on magic bytes. I was just curious how many bytes there are. Like, is there a false positive rate?
I think it's 4 or 8 bytes.
Okay, so pretty low.
And that's like why we might consider having like the option to specify, hey, this should be the serialized version, or this just like ignore the magic bytes if there are, and just treat it as a raw blob of data. The thing is, if the header magic bytes happen to match, it will fail with an error if it fails to load the dictionary. So that's probably the only corner case that might go wrong if you leave it to auto detect.
And train from samples, I assume, always gives you a serialized dictionary, so that would always work.
Yes, I also would assume that.
Yeah, I don't think it would be worth adding an enum. I think if we care, it would be method groups. Create, deserialize, and create raw, for example.
Yep, fine with me. I mainly have a question like whether we even want to have methods for training from samples, because so far there was no direct ask from community on the API. It just came up during internal discussion. So question is that how much API we want to like expose for these, because one thing I mentioned, it's creating of these dictionaries, like training them, is probably something which would be done offline on larger blobs of data, and then you would just deserialize it in the process, presumably once, and reuse the dictionary instance. Just wanted to highlight this thing.
Yeah, if you hadn't added I would have asked. Like, I was actually looking for it, and I'm like, oh, nice that it's there. I think it's good to have the complete package, especially if it's all there in the same like shared library or whatever.
Okay, so in that case, I will want to mention one more thing. There are several algorithms how to train those dictionaries, and this is basically leaving it up to implementation detail, like to basically pick one. The underlying implementation has way to like select a specific one. The problem is that each one of them has a different set of parameters which you can fine tune. And personally, I until we see big demand for it, I don't think the large API surface for fine tuning the training would be worth it until we really have some demand. So what we have here, this train for samples, is basically relying on default parameters which are implementation defined.
I see. So we're not picking defaults. It's the shared library's defaults.
Yeah, we are not picking defaults. It's going to be the standard library itself, the native one.
Yeah, it seems fine to me. I mean, you could always add more knobs later.
Yeah, I think anybody who wants the advanced thing can, use the command line tool that presumably exists, or call the library themselves and, file a feature request. But I don't think we should take the method away entirely, because it's weird that we would basically have a reader without a writer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the read-only memory of byte. For one, that feels like it should just be read-only sequence if we actually want that, and for two, cut it until someone cares.
Sure, like I was thinking about read-only sequence, but it felt to me that logically it does not like. It's like one large sequence which happens to be cut into several chunks, but in the API, the individual we really need several samples which are like independent blobs of memory. So that's why I chose this one. But yeah, we can cut it. We can cut it.
Read-only memory of read-only memory is weird. I would slightly accept read-only span of read-only memory, but the fact that the outer thing is read-only memory suggests you're holding a reference to it, but you're just enumerating it. So really, you want IEnumerable byte array, but
Yes.
I would say cut it until someone cares more.
Yep. Fine
Yeah,
with
I
me.
agree that read-only sequence isn't really a great fit either, though. So anyway, I'm fine cutting it.
Does train from samples need to be called train from samples, or is it just train?
It's the name that was given in the native binary, so I copied it. I'm fine with making changes. We can call it train.
How do others feel about that? I'd also like to point out I'm the one suggesting a shorter name. That's pretty rare, I think. So I'm proud of that.
I mean, part of me is like, what else would you be training from if not samples? But the other part of me is like, yeah, I'm fine with train. I'm fine either way, though. I don't think from samples is terrible. The parameters are called samples, so that's good too, like you said. I guess a small vote for train.
Yeah. I would ask Tobe, but apparently he dropped. So, Mr. St. John, how do you feel about train versus train from samples?
I prefer the shorter name. Yeah, the only thing I was kind of hesitant about was, to me, that the term train here it implies that it's doing a lot more like smarter things than it actually is doing. But
It most likely is. It's trying to create a small dictionary as possible that is going to be efficient.
Yeah.
On the sample data, so it's expensive computationally.
I see. What is it called in the backing native library that we are binding to? Is it called train there?
I believe it's called train from samples.
Okay. Yeah. So in that case, I'll suppress my desire to have it called something else than train and say the shorter name is what I'd vote for. Yep.
What's this lengths parameter?
Yeah, so the format in which the library takes the data is that you concatenate all samples together, and then you give it array of lengths from the start of the big array of samples. So
we could do that for you, though. I mean, I could see how it might be an optimization if
that was the second parameter, second like overload with the read-only memory of read-only memory, that you would just give it the samples as an array of something or whatever.
I see.
And we would do that for you.
Mm-hmm.
So the top one is basically copying the shape of the native method, which will be more efficient but not ergonomic, I would say, because user would probably have to do it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, again, this feels like it's probably a power API. So being a little unergonomic until we find that it's more common than we think seems fine. I'd probably call it sample lengths instead of just lengths, just to give it more affinity to the previous parameter.
Sounds good.
And so I assume this one's going to throw if it's empty.
I'm thinking, and most likely yes, because
and would the sum of all of these values need to match
yes
this length or you'll throw? Okay. Yeah, as long as it's validating, I'm happy with it.
Right, so that leaves the compression options, I believe.
Well, that moves on to read-only memory of byte data on a dictionary.
Right. Do we even
right,
need
right.
it?
Yes, sorry.
Where is that read-only memory pointing?
An
It's
array
going
we
to-
create,
It's going to
presumably.
be backing array because we don't really want to expose read-only memory or whatever into the native part
Right.
because that's going to crash stuff.
Right, because then it was if you dispose it, is the memory now an out of bounds read? So on
Yeah.
the first call to get data, you're going to copy it into a managed array and then just return a read-only projection over that array.
No, the plan is actually to basically from let's say from the create you get a read-only span, so we would copy it into an array and then pin it and instantiate the native structures over that one. And reasoning to that for that is that at the implementation level, the standard library has a different types for compression and decompression dictionary. So in order to make it more simple, basically the decision in the team was leaning towards to make it simple and not have compression dictionary and decompression dictionary, but have only just one. And internally we would create both of them and use as appropriate.
So
Well, if it's the same bytes on disk or whatever, like I like sharing it, but why? I mean, if internally we're using different memory anyway, like why expose it?
No. So we are not using different memory. So it will be let's say the 100 kilobytes, which consist the dictionary bytes, will be shared among for both the compression and decompression native dictionary structures.
So you're basically just
So
holding two safe handles.
Yes,
Interpreted the
it's
same
going to be holding safe handlers which are internally pointing to the same byte array, which is going to be pinned during the lifetime of the dictionary.
So
What
how
would
are you?
happen if we deleted it though? Like the property, like is it a problem if we did?
So you have the train from samples, and presumably you want to be able to save it to a disk or something so that you don't have
Right.
to train it second time.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, yeah, no, I didn't think about that
Yeah,
fully. Thanks.
And where are you? How are you clearing the pin?
Dictionary is disposable.
Sure. Now assume someone doesn't dispose it. They let it get garbage collected and finalized. Do you have a finalizer? Do you have a safe handle wrapping the pin? Like
there is a finalizer on the save handlers, so the release hand. So basically, when those save handlers are finalized, disposed, released, whatever the terminology is, it will remove the pin. So it's not actually like the dictionary which is holding the handle. It's the save handlers that are inside.
Okay.
To make sure that it cleans up correctly.
Okay. So I'm fine with saying we want to make the copy ourselves, but I feel like I have to ask if create is taking this read-only span buffer parameter and then just copying it so that it can return it as the data parameter. Should we instead take read-only memory and just hold the memory you give us? Or do we just not want to trust that somebody never changes it?
I felt it's safer to make a defensive copy. I'm not sure what our approach is to this type of API. I would be fine with memory.
I mean, I'm fine with saying we're taking a defensive copy for safety and integrity and whatever reasons. Because if we take the memory, like now when you read the data, it doesn't necessarily represent what we had because you have writable access to this memory without shenanigans. So I'm fine with the copy. I just felt like I wanted to ask.
Yeah, I don't know if there is existing precedent for either of those. So
yeah, if the expectation is that we're talking kilobytes and not mega or gigabytes, then I think the defensive copy is the way to go.
Yeah, the FAQ says that the useful dictionaries are up to 100 kilobytes.
Okay. And
beyond that, it's not useful anymore.
Yeah, if we need a thing later, then we'd call it create unsafe or something, because the guideline is don't overload span and memory if you can, because it. Are you copying
Yeah.
or are you holding a reference? And
Mhm.
don't do both. Okay. So this one, yeah, certainly. Yeah, my feeling is we should not add an enum to represent this tri-state. If we think we need all three in the first implementation, I suggest we name different method groups, but I'm happy with saying we only support detect.
Sounds good.
Okay, so.
Usage-wise, is this data blob of the dictionary just something you would bake next to your client app, for example, when it talks to the server?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, so my assumption is that both peers, right, the compression and decompression, need to have exactly the same dictionary. So
Yes.
is that just something you would ship ahead of time, maybe with your release of the app, more so than something you would update on the fly?
Yeah, so both possibilities are viable. So you can either bake the dictionary somewhere into your application, or I think it's I don't remember what the abbreviation is, but basically there is some proposal for the standard encoded request response in HTTP, where you somehow distribute the dictionaries out of band. So I don't know if it's maybe something like that. You get a header which tells you URI where you download the dictionary, and then somehow the server will tell you, hey, like the dictionary that you downloaded before should be used for this request response decompression. Yeah, but it's something like that. It exists. I'm not sure how much it is used in the WAL or how new or bleeding edge it is, but it's also something that apparently exists.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
And these compression options are only for the stream, right?
Yes, only for compression. For decompression, there is, well, no options.
Right, but they weren't used in the. Oh, they are used in the encoder as well. Okay, so this is the
yeah,
encoder
so
in the stream.
Because besides quality and window or dictionary and window, we wanted to add some more configuration notes, or basically the discussion on the issue was asking for some additional knobs which seemed very simple from the API perspective. So I will get to those. So from the top we have window and quality. Basically quality is higher it is, the more time it takes to compress it, but the better the compression is. The window, so it's basically how basically it maintains some big window during which it can back reference to existing occurrences of the sequence, and that's how it like compresses stuff. It says, hey, like I saw this sequence of bytes before on this offset, and basically larger the window, the better potential for decompression, because the more sequences that you can back reference into. At the same time, the larger the window, the more RAM you need for compression and decompression. So that's basically what the parameter does.
You
It's-
mentioned in the comments that that isn't currently exposed for Brotli, the window, even though there's a similar concept.
Yes, there is, and there is proposal that's on the agenda today to expose it for
Okay.
broadly.
We're
Got
probably
it.
not going to get there, but it is it's this tab.
The default values are, so for the quality, there is API which will tell you what the min-max is, and default is hard-coded in the source code. So we would maybe want to either copy it and expose it here as well. For window, the values has been read from the source code.
Is default in between min and max, or is it like a sentinel value?
Yeah, default is between min and max. And I believe there is also something like if you set it to -1 or 0, it will use the implementation defined default or something like that. So
but
there is like a
is this a number we're picking, or is this we ask the implementation what its default
say
is?
that's from reading the source code. There is like there is no API to get it. There is just like, but it's the value that's in the source code in the macro somewhere, and the size is in bits. So
Well,
basically the exponent of over 2.
it's
So-
in it. I think from the comment, it's the bit size of the window. So this is
Yes.
a 23-bit window.
Which makes sense. 'Cause
Um,
23 bytes would be pretty small for
Right. But it's not
looking
reading
back.
back only 23 bits. It's the window size is
yeah.
representable
No,
as 2 to the 23.
It's yes, but that's
So
how it was.
it's
So-
2 to the window
so-
byte window.
Makes sense. So there is a theoretical issue that the standard library, or not the standard library, this C whatever it's called library, could get out of sync if they change the source code, right? Change the default.
well, we are ingesting the source code ourselves, so yeah, it can get out of sync, but only when we decide to update the version ourselves.
I see.
Okay. Because I was gonna have the same question of what do we do when the underlying changes, and you're suggesting we would change it when the underlying has decided that they wanted to make a change,
Yes.
and yeah. So since this is, it's interesting because since this is static, you can't use it as a literal, or sorry, you can't use it as a default parameter. So we can't say quality defaults to default quality, or rather window defaults to default window. But you can pass it as a explicit parameter. It'll just call the get on the static, which the JIT will turn into a const because it'll see it's static read only, presumably. So
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fine. I like that it's exposing the number. I just slightly wish that we could get it by asking a question instead of needing to have our source code match their source code. That's all.
Mhm.
It's hard to find precedent here, but in my head, this makes sense both as using window and quality as the suffixes and as the prefixes, because as a prefix they'll group together in IntelliSense, but as suffixes they make more sense in English. But I feel like we probably have cases where we have, like Zmax versus Max Z, and so how do people feel about the noun as a prefix or a suffix here?
I like prefix. Isn't it more common?
Well, did we want it to say default window or window default?
Yeah, I like the prefix in all cases.
So window default, window
Max
min, window
default.
max?
Sorry, no.
Okay.
Put window and quality at the end, the way it's proposed.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I agree this reads better, but it does mean that default's next to default and not min and max are next to each other. But all right, leave it the way it is. Asked and answered.
Right. As mentioned, when dictionary is being used, the dictionary is created with a quality parameter, because when if it is like a raw data, or maybe possibly even if it's the serialized version, they initialize some internal structures based on the quality parameter. So whatever quality parameter was used when creating the dictionary will override the quality parameter on the encoder. So that's just matter of documentation to say, hey, if you specify dictionary, the quality parameter has no effect because what's in the dictionary takes precedence.
I mean, not saying this is the right thing, but we could do some sort of validation that you haven't like tried to reconfigure quality if you used a dictionary. Might be annoying, but at least you would know.
I think that the way that it's presented here is sensible. It's quality to use if I don't have a dictionary, and then the dictionary has its own quality.
Yeah, I think simply is better.
Okay.
Because otherwise, if you set a dictionary, you would simply just, well, actually, if you set a dictionary, you would then want to set quality to dictionary.quality, which we don't expose. So then we need to expose it, and then we would say this
No,
is
I'm
silly.
not suggesting
So
that. Like the suggestion, to be clear, which I think is a bad one, and we can move on, is that if you set quality and dictionary, if you like set quality to a non-default value, there's like an error when you try to use the options, just because it's like you asked to do a thing that's not sensible. But I think that's just too much
Yeah.
effort.
I think
it's
that would make
fine.
sense if quality was nullable.
Yeah.
That basically they need to, only one of them can be non-null, but I think it's fine to say quality is ignored.
Yep. All right.
Okay. Then the advanced parameters, that those we don't have exposed for Brotli or other, but again, folks were asking for these. So target block size, basically saying how often it outputs stuff which will affect latency when streaming over network. So the smaller the blocks, the lower the latency. And checksum appending some, I believe it's CRC even, checksum at the end of the data blob. It's, again, something that was requested to be configured. I think it defaults to false. Yeah. And the last one is a little bit more complicated, and it's something which basically it's a setting which enables large windows. So by default you have some max window. Oh, sorry. Maybe let me read the comments because. Yeah, so it basically improves the compression ratio of very large files because it allows larger compression windows, and internally it uses some additional memory to basically perform better. But at the same time, it increases the memory requirements for decompression as well. So it's opt-in, and together with some additional functionality like the reference prefix, which until now I didn't explain, so it's probably a good place to do it. So the prefix is basically very similar to dictionary, but it is not affected by a reset. And basically it has to be specified like each time you perform the compression. Like after reset, you need to specify it again if you want to compress or decompress the data blob. And the difference is that because dictionaries, like the ones that are created as a Z-standard dictionary objects, they are immutable and they are like preprocessed and made to be shared. But the reference prefix is able to do something more efficient internally. So it will basically create the dictionary internally and leave it mutable because it's local to the encoder or decoder. And this can, as one of the things which it allows is it allows the standard to be used as a diff engine. So you basically, where you compress a file, so you have base and destination, you compress the destination file and you give it the base file as a dictionary. And basically the compression parameter, compression algorithm in this case turns out to be pretty good binary diff engine to produce patches, which you can apply same way on the other side. And this works for like gigabyte files that you can create like 70 megabytes of binary diff for 3 gigabyte files.
A couple questions. So you mentioned the reference prefix method being like kind
Like
of
a dictionary.
mutable and resettable, which is
Yeah.
interesting. But like, do we make a copy of the prefix? Like, should it be a read-only span? No.
Internally pins the memory. Yeah. So there is right. So this actually uncovers some inconsistency because when we create a dictionary, we create a copy defensively, but here in this reference prefix, we just pin the data to avoid creating a copy because it's sort of as an optimization.
So you're expected not to change it, and certainly not to,
Yes.
to release it or anything.
Yeah, like it's expected.
yeah.
The data is expected not to change during compression decompression.
So until you call reset, like you're
Yeah.
basically not supposed to touch it.
Yes.
Okay. And then if you set quality and that bool, the long range, whatever ever,
Mhm.
Enable log distance matching, does that override whatever quality I set? Or not quality, sorry, window. I meant window. Right, because it says it changes the
yeah,
leaf
so
window.
it increases the default. If you don't specify custom
see.
window size, it by default increases the window size. But then you can obviously, if you at the same time specify a window, it will respect that. So basically, it changes the defaults.
So it changes if you pass 0,
Yes.
Got it.
not if
Or
you
if you don't
assign
set
it to
at all.
default.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, because if
Yes.
you assign it to default, then you've now picked 23. But if you leave it as 0, which is the default, then
Yeah.
if you turn on LDM, then it might turn to 28 or whatever.
Or
Yes.
just don't call the setter, right? And I
Okay.
assume if you read the window, you read 0, right? Like if I
Yes.
just call new standard options and read that window, yeah.
Yes.
Which is going to be interesting because it's with the setters presumably going to throw if you set a value that's less than min window unless the value you set is 0.
Right.
Yeah. So there is, and there's another good question. So I believe with Brotli, the validation happens in the setter, and I know in networking we have some APIs which accepts options objects, and we do the validation elsewhere. You do it somewhere in the logic. So that's maybe a good question to ask. Like, when should the validation happen? At the point where we are setting the incorrect value, or when we actually try to create the encoder or decoder? What are your opinions on this?
I mean, my opinion is it should be set as soon as, or it should be thrown as soon as you know it's bad. So if you don't throw until you get inside, Z standard encoder, the exception is I don't like something about the options. But if you throw when somebody's assigning, when they're calling set window, then this is a very clear set window is what failed. And
So I will say that if there's an interdependency, because this has come up a lot when I design APIs, like between options, like the option might be valid depending on how you set the other option.
Right.
Like it's way better to just validate it when it's used.
Yeah,
And all
so-
of them are at their final values.
yes, there is a guideline that basically no two properties should ever pay attention to each other. So, so if you can only verify them as a unit, then you have to wait until you get the in. But window, this is the entire validation state.
Yeah.
So the set window property makes more sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yes, if for some reason long distance matching can't be enabled, if target block size is the minimum value and quality
No,
and
I
window
don't
is win min, then like that would have to wait until you call the encoder.
Yeah, I don't think it is the case with
So.
any of those.
Okay, so reference prefix. Why are you using reference as the verb?
Because
Because you said this one calls it set. It feels sort of like register.
I am open to suggestions for a better name.
Right. So it's because register or record or set or add or any of these make sense, but I feel like
Yeah,
I like
reference.
that it implies there's no copy though. I actually really appreciate that aspect of it. I mean, so does the fact that it's read-only memory as
Yeah.
opposed to span. But
yeah, maybe that was my thinking at the time I wrote it. That it stresses that no copy is happening, but I'm not. That's not a hill I'm going to die on.
Yeah, I just feel like the only word reference that ever appears in the BCL is reference equals.
Right, and that's
Speaking-
not the verb.
of breaking new ground, going to the earlier point, I know this is like a struct because our encoders are structs, but and I know we don't do a ton of mutable structs in general. There's like sequence reader and a few, but do any of them have reset? Like, is that a sign that maybe it should be a class? Not that you can't like reset something on the stack and have it be useful potentially, but like.
I mean,
Just
I personally don't know why this is a struct.
To be consistent with broadly encoder decoder,
Sure, I don't know why that one's a
Does it-
struct either.
that's the only reason that I come up with. So
Because I think with Broadly the idea was the encoders just being a wrapper around the safe handle. So we're really using that. Really, you're passing the Broadly safe handle, but we're telling or we're wrapping it in a which purpose context, and so at that point it's like cancellation token. You have a cancellation token source, which is the class, and cancellation token is just it's a limited projection over that other thing. But it's kind of weird because cancellation token really you can only ever ask it a question, and these all have go mutate state, and because your state is itself a reference, it works correctly. It's just it is weird, and if this
you get these weird copy things too, though, right?
If
Like, where
this
you can
thing
have, like,
is
yeah.
every time you call this, if this is adding a new memory handle into a list parameter, then this means this isn't a safe handle, it's a safe handle in a list. Which means it's
And, yeah,
now
like-
2 references and not 1, so maybe we should make it a class so it's easier to pass.
yeah, like there can be only one prefix, but that's probably not as relevant to your argument. Like if you call it the second time, it will override the previous one. That's what I meant.
Oh, then
But
set
and-
definitely
and-
seems like the verb. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Regardless, it's another reference.
right. But this means now passing it by value is it's 2 registers wide instead of 1. Which is
Well, plus the length, right? And then whether or not yeah.
yeah, and then assuming that reset is put it back in the state that it was when you called the constructor, that means you have to also save all these parameters. So you have to save the dictionary explicitly so you can
So
keep it. You have to
Another
keep
thing
the
to
max
say,
window. You have to this is big.
Not really, because those are so-called sticky parameters, and they are not affected by resets in the native level. So the native layer actually has like 3. Like there's an enum that you pass to reset, and there's like reset session, reset parameters, whatever. And so basically, we are calling the one that's touching only the prefix and whatever work in progress that you might have. So if you want to stop decompressing, you call reset, and then you are back to the same state that you were after the constructor. But we don't need to save a reference to dictionary or the max window which was being used, because those values are not erased at the native level.
So, looking at Brotli encoder, it ended up being a safe handle and a boolean.
Yeah.
And
the
here, I think
disposed handle.
you're so far looking at 2 safe handles and a boolean.
One because this one is on the save handle, so we end up still wrapping one save handle because one is referenced by the other. So it's decoder save handle and whatever save handle is holding onto the prefix.
Okay, so you've
But-
you've registered like the parent-child relationship with the safe handles, and so you've said
Yes.
this memory safe handle is being tracked by the decoder safe handle.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would still make it a class, but
I mean, like, I am not opposed to it. So far, the only argument is consistency with Brotli.
because especially if you're making them reusable, like great, you allocated it once, it's 24 bytes. Cool.
Yep, no problem.
Right, so are we changing reference prefix to set prefix?
Mhm.
So that the overwrite semantic is expressed. Okay, chat.
That
So
prefix reference.
there's a question I asked earlier about concatenating multiple of these things together, and someone in the chat said that the reference implementation will, if at the end of one buffer it sees another compressed thing, it will just keep going. So you need to understand what the behavior is going to be. If I pass 2 concatenated things in here to get max length and it says an answer, but then calling decompress sees that I have 2 concatenated things and tries to decompress both of them, that would be bad. So
I think I need to check the implementation, but I think the decompress will stop after the first one and will keep returning done.
yeah. So as
Into-
long as decompress returns done when it hits the first one and matches what the
Yes.
length is, I'm happy.
Yes.
I'm just saying, test it. So
Oh yeah,
Ah.
I've tested it because one of the tests was designed for this and it
Okay.
kept failing until I fixed it.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons why I was looking at, hey, like this reset actually might be useful because like once you decode everything, the decoder is useless because you can't continue on.
okay. All right. Is there anything else that we? Oh, the options. It's sad that Steve left. So I do feel like with the dictionary being read only, and that's the reason I had to ask, was it thread safe?
Mhm.
With the dictionary being immutable, rather, that your representation of wherever they are, so
At the
these
top.
compression options, this represents a thing that you could reasonably share across, like, I am a library, these are the compression options I'm going to use for all compressions.
Mhm.
Which means that what is the uncompressed size of the content I'm going to compress does not belong here because that's not shareable. That's per option or per
operation.
Yeah, per operation. So I do think that if we want that on the stream, we need to just add a method on the stream, which is set.
Yeah.
Whatever you call your plain text.
Yeah, I think it's something like set source size or something like that.
But yeah, I agree with not putting it on the compression options because it changes the meaning of the compression options. So scrolling. Right, so the encoder called it set source size, and presumably we want to just lift this method onto Z standard stream, and it will throw if you're not in compress mode, and it will throw if you've already started writing to it.
Yes.
So I think that's fine.
Interesting. The native library calls it set pledged source size.
Yeah, because like you upfront
Yeah,
promise that it will not be more.
I know. I swear.
And if you get it wrong, then they
Got it.
beat you with I don't know, lead shot and socks or whatever it is that people supposedly do at frat hazing. Okay, so I copied set source size that takes long size. On the stream, now do we want to overload that with int? We can overload it with int later if anyone cares. On the encoder, we said no because we don't care because it's low level, and if somebody's calling it on 32-bit, then they can pay the cost of the extra register. But I think on the stream we can still say it's kind of a power method. So we'll add it if someone complains. All right, these are all stream things. We said no to the owns encoder addition, so I'll write that down. That's up. And yes, capital Z little s is the way that they capitalize it in the reference library, right?
Yes. Yeah, and in the RFC as well.
Yep.
I actually had to I originally had the capital S and then had to face lots of pain changing it because Windows being case insensitive makes it hard to rename files, and Git also was playing weird.
Yep. Okay. Yes, I do apologize to anybody who wanted to, us to get to a third thing on the agenda today, but
yeah, I apologize as well. I hope it will be faster, but at the same time, I'm not surprised it's to the rest of the slot.
all right. We didn't really talk about, you have operation status compress and a bunch of try compress overloads. Are they
I think
all
compress
needed?
is missing out. Just
Oh,
I think it's just a typo.
yeah,
at the end.
there was out is final block. I don't think it's supposed to be out parameter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you to compress.
Oh, I see.
You tell it when this was the last one, basically.
Yeah.
I see. Don't you have
you-
to put the out at the end? Am I wrong?
Oh, we should. I think.
In the other things that is final block is defaulted. I think that's why is final block is usually at the end.
I see. And out doesn't have to be at the end. Okay, I'm just stuff up.
Our style guideline is put all the outs at the end unless you have default parameters where the language says they have
Got
to
it.
go more at the end. So
Okay.
so do we want to default is final block to false? Or wait, actually I don't know which way we default it.
I
Probably.
would put the same thing we do for broadly. I think we default it to false because that makes more sense.
I think
Because
that makes sense.
then you don't accidentally say this was the last piece of data on your first call.
Yeah, if you're gonna error one way, just error on not being done yet. And then,
It looks like in Brotli we removed the default.
Oh.
No,
But then we kept it as the final parameter. That's a weird breaking our design guidelines.
Because JSON, I know we did this in JSON somewhere. So JSON UTF-8 JSON writer has and is final, I think. Nope, that's not that one.
Oh, does base64 encoder default to true? That might make sense for base64.
Yeah. So I think if we're saying it's a mandatory parameter, it should be left of the outs, but on the other hand, leaving it to the right of the outs matches broadly. So we can just match broadly. I don't like it, but I don't like the other way either, so.
You don't like it, yeah, in the middle.
I don't like it not matching broadly, and I don't like it at the end if it's not defaulted, and I
Yeah.
can't think of what a good default is. So all the options are bad. So as proposed seems fine. Match broadly. I'll just write a note on it. Yeah, so why do we have so many try compresses?
Those are one-shot convenience APIs, and due to the combination that you might want to specify quality or dictionary or window, you get few combinations.
Okay, so
I think we have on broadly there are with quality, there is with nothing, then with quality and window. Those three. For these standards, since we are introducing dictionary, we probably want at least one which takes a dictionary, which is the one in the middle. And this one is sort of optional. It takes decompression options, but at that point, user can just instantiate the encoder with the options and process it and then dispose it.
yeah, I mean, do we need these at all? Given that someone could like, is there
so
anywhere
the
you're
last-
planning on calling it?
The last one we definitely don't need. For the first two, I think the library can be more efficient because it's just one call to the native library and it's done. Instead of like one call to instantiate encoder, one call to process something, and another call to free the context. Depends how much we care.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's just who's expected to call it, because
Like those are like small one-shot API. So if you have something that's small, this might be the go-to API that you like know. Hey, like it's not going to be more than 1 megabyte or something. This would be probably the API to use. But yeah, like at the same time, it is low-level API. But we have these for broadly.
fair enough. It's because this is just like, at best you're gonna save creating the one class wrapping the other safe handle.
Yeah.
So the savings of this is low.
It's mostly convenience.
Okay. It like if it seems like it's a thing that people will call. But you think drop the last one because it's,
Yep, sure.
I mean, yeah, we can add it if people want it. All right. Anybody have anything else on this one? Just getting through final notes. Z standard encoder and encoder, we want default constructors now that we've changed them to class.
Makes sense.
This also now lets you fix you don't need to detect the first call to write.
Yes.
You get to create it at the constructor time. And you can get rid of the Boolean parameter because you can just use whether or not you have a safe handle that's been disposed as your dispose state.
The longs.
Hmm?
We discussed some longs, right? So changing ints to a long.
Yeah, I have them as long in my notes, or in the updated proposals.
So we
set-
went with set prefix instead of
source
set
size.
prefix reference. It's probably clear. I mean, we take a specific ban for the things we copy.
Yeah. I don't know. Eric, do you want to have an opinion on set prefix reference to say it's holding the reference? I think we've done that by the fact it says read-only memory.
I don't have a strong opinion on this. Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's go shorter. If you're gonna argue for the shorter name, I think it's fine.
Yeah. Again, I can't think of many places that we use the word reference
Yeah.
other than reference equals. So class. Delete more comments. And okay. So, yep, we changed a bunch of stuff to long. We cut the read-only memory of read-only memory overload of train. We shortened the word to train. Simplified create on the dictionary. Made things classes. Set prefix. And decided against Stone's encoder. So we talked a lot and didn't change much. Which, nice work.
Thank you.
It is a big surface, right? So it's
what was that, Thomas?
it's a big surface, right? So
Oh,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
necessarily surprising that like
Oh, and we added set source size to Z standard stream. And decided is final block be the last parameter to compress, even though it's not defaulted and after the ouch. All right, that was the, I'm going to write down that we did talk about it. All right. So theoretically, that is the correct updated proposal with most of the comments and redundant namespaces removed, but if you see something weird, feel free to seek clarity. Oh, and I guess flush is, yeah, that you, after you've called with his final operation status, could have come back with destination too short,
Too
so now
small,
you have to
yeah.
call flush to get the trailing bit. Okay.
Yes, and at the same time, I think if you call is fine with is final block false, then you can use flush directly, and it will like finalize the data. So yeah, basically it's a way to finalize everything.
Well, because that's
Yeah.
interesting. Because if you always have to call flush, I guess it's. I guess
don't
if you
think
call
always need to.
if you call is final true and it returns done, then I guess you don't need to call flush.
Yes.
Okay. I was gonna say, can we just get rid of the is final parameter and say call flush to be done? But you can noodle on that, and we can change it until
Conversely, you could
next November.
get rid of flush and write and do a zero length is final, right? Are you saying that's equivalent?
I think so. I am not 100% sure, but I don't see a reason why not.
I mean, flush is a weird thing to call on like a non-streaming API.
Did we have it on Brotli?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Well done.
then we'll say we had that discussion then and decided this was the reasonable shape. But
And it does the exact same thing for Brotli, presumably.
Yes.
This is final. Yeah. All right.
in fact, flush on Brotli is implemented as compress empty is final true.
Well, there answers that. I
so-
guess it is equivalent.
Oh, sorry. It calls compress. It calls a hidden overload with empty source and with Brotli encoder operation not flush. So I don't know what compress with true does.
Maybe throws if you've already written the final. Who knows?
Yeah. It calls it with finish or process. So finish, process, and flush are 3 different verbs. All right. Yeah, this is fine. If later you look at it and you decide you want to get rid of the is final and say people have to call flush, that's good by me. But if you just want to keep it as is, that's cool too.
Okay.
So. All right. Thank you, Radek.
Thank you.
And I did not mean to click on that. And thanks for joining us today, Eric, because otherwise I think we would have had to abort due to lack of quorum. So,
Just sit here and listen.
Yep. All right, and thanks everyone who joined us on YouTube. Had a lot of comment. Not all of it got relayed, but I think the idea got relayed. So thanks for your participation, and we'll see you next week here on our same .NET time at our same .NET time on our same .NET channel. I know prepositions in English. Until then, I don't know, whatever the Czech version is of ciao, except I can't pronounce Czech apparently, so blah, 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 blah.
Can
It's
say ahoy.
about as
ahoy.
good as I would have done.
Okay, thanks you all. Have
Thanks,
a nice
guys.
day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye everyone.